My heart shattered when no one wanted me, until she saw my scars and showed me love. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The world as I knew it collapsed around me, breaking apart like glass under the weight of my despair. I stood at the edge of that desolate parking lot, the cold air biting at my skin, feeling invisible while the world continued on without noticing my existence. Everything seemed alive and vibrant, colors swirling, laughter echoing, yet I was cast in shadow. My fingers trembled as I gripped the tattered edge of my hoodie, heart racing and chest tightening. My eyes leaked tears that fell onto the concrete, mingling with the grit and rubble of lost dreams. No one saw me. Not one pair of eyes turned in my direction. I was alone. But then there was her voice. A soft melody cutting through the harsh clatter of the city, like a warm sunbeam penetrating through a foggy dawn. "Hey," she said, and the sound was both a question and a lifeline. I turned slightly, hesitation heavy in my veins. She stood there, framed by the fading light, her ginger hair a wild flame against the backdrop of steel and gray. "What's wrong?" she asked, genuine concern washing over her features. For a breath, I felt seen, and it terrified me. Who am I to let her into my chaos? Desperation twisted in my belly, but I found myself spilling my darkness into the open air. My words were jagged, full of shame. I told her about the whispers, the dismissive glances, the way my parents made me feel like a burden. The way I wore my scars like a heavy cloak. I watched as her eyes shifted, absorbing every piece of my brokenness. It felt raw, the two of us standing on that cracked pavement under the bruised sky, where the past collided with the present. And then, something shifted. There was a flicker of warmth in her gaze. "You're not alone," she whispered, her hands trembling as they reached toward mine. I pulled back, panic igniting my heart. It was too much, too fast. But in that instant, her fingers brushed against my scars, subtle, yet electric. A painful reminder of everything I had tried to hide, and yet, she wasn't recoiling. She was holding on. I caught my breath, overwhelmed by the sensation, tinged with hope but wrapped in fear. Would she stay? Would she run, just like the rest? The question loomed in the air, hanging heavy like the storm clouds threatening to break. But before I could ask, something flickered in the distance. A shadow moved, lurking in the corners of my mind. A familiar figure emerged, their face a mask of judgment. The flash of a cruel smile sent a chill down my spine. Heart pounding, I turned back to her, desperation returning. Would she see the chaos creeping back into my life? What if this moment was the calm before an inevitable storm? Would she still stand by my side when the shadows pulled at my feet? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My heart raced as I turned to face the approaching figure, the weight of expectation heavy in the air. The moment of vulnerability I had shared with her felt incredibly fragile, like a spider's web glistening with dew, poised to be shattered. I forced a smile, desperate to mask the fear gripping my chest, but it faltered the instant I met their gaze. "Look who we have here," the voice crooned, familiar yet dripping with disdain. It was Kevin, a ghost from my past, materializing in a moment of desperate hope. The little weirdo finally made a friend. His laughter rang out, a sharp blade slicing through the warmth her presence had ignited. "Oh, just leave me alone," I muttered, casting my eyes down, ashamed, the familiar gravity of my insecurities pulling me inwards. I flicked a glance back to her, seeking reassurance, but my heart sank as I noticed the flicker of confusion crossing her face. Would she see me as I saw myself, a mere shadow drifting through the cracks of existence? Does she know about your little issues? Kevin sneered as he took a step closer, reveling in my discomfort, leaning into the role of tormentor that he wore so effortlessly. You should probably tell her. You wouldn't want to waste her time, right? I felt my walls rising once more, rebuilding the armor I had just begun to shed. The moment we shared felt like a distant memory, as reality crashed back in. I wished I could tell him to leave, to disappear like the shadows he cast, but words failed me. I felt paralyzed, spiraling towards the edge of despair once more, yet there she stood, unwavering. I traced her silhouette, saw her firm stance, her clenched fists ready to protect not just me, but herself from this volatile display. My heart trembled as a flicker of hope ignited within. Would she defend me? Would she fight back against the tide of judgment that flowed so freely from Kevin's mouth, my past rising up as if to engulf me entirely? I don't mind, she said, voice steady, cutting through the taunts with a fierce clarity. Everyone has scars, Kevin, even you. It was as if she had summoned the courage to strike back, breaking the chains of my fear and shame. I couldn't help but be in awe of her strength, yet my mind raced with insecurity. What if I dragged her down into the shadows with me? Yeah. Scars that get you bullied, right? Kevin provoked, a smirk stretching across his face. You want to be seen with that? Kelly, my only lifeline in this turbulent sea, held my gaze, her stance steady. I don't care what others think, she replied, her eyes unwavering, a silent promise infused with warmth. Just like that, she illuminated a path through the darkness, one I desperately wanted to trust. My heart soared and plummeted in equal measure. The longing for connection battled fiercely with the fear that I'd only be a burden to her, a point of weakness she'd inevitably regret interacting with. I didn't mean to pull you into this, I breathed, the hoarseness of my voice betraying the turmoil within. I chose to stand here, she insisted, her expression softening, like the first light of dawn breaking through a cold night. You matter. Your scars don't define you. This isn't your fault. Her words felt like a balm against the rawness of my insecurity. Yet, as the confrontation continued, the shadows swirled and morphed around us as Kevin scoffed, the monster in my mind regaining strength. I could feel the weight of his eyes, scrutinizing, feeding off my vulnerability. You're pathetic, he spat, a weak blow, but one that landed heavy in the silence that followed. You'll never be anything more than a burden. Both of you will realize it, sooner or later. The venom in his words ricocheted painfully in my chest, a reminder that a single voice could disrupt a heartbeat. I wanted to cry out, to scream that we wouldn't let him win, that we were stronger than the shadows that loomed. My body trembled with rage, the ghost of Kevin haunting every inch of progress I had made. With a sudden jolt, I stepped forward, emboldened by her presence, ready to confront him. But as I did, the familiar numbness crept back. Was it worth it? Would I merely amplify the hosts of doubt that lived inside me? What if this was one of those moments where I'd let hope slip through my fingers once again? As those thoughts battled within me, I felt her hand brush against my back, a gentle nudge towards possibility. Don't listen to him. Don't listen to any voice but your own, she whispered, her warmth melting some of the ice binding my heart. Then, Kevin turned sharply, his eyes flaring with anger, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. My heart sank as I realized that he hadn't just come to ridicule, he had come with a plan. The smile on his face twisted, revealing a darkness that seeped through the cracks of shallow confidence. You think it's over? He laughed bitterly. This is just the beginning. You'll see. With that cryptic warning, he retreated into the shadows, leaving a chilling silence punctuated only by the pulsating echo of my own heartbeat. I felt like glass left unguarded, shattered by the comment alone, and suddenly aware that my struggles were far from over. As I turned to face her, wanting to grasp the hope entwined in her kindness, I saw something in her expression that frightened me more than Kevin's taunts. Concern flickered behind her eyes, a question lingering there that made my stomach drop. Would she stay? What did he mean by that? She asked softly, a tremor threading through her voice. And as those words hung suspended in the air, the chaos inside me swelled to an impending storm, relentless like the shadows that prowled ever nearer. My heart clenched painfully, the truth dancing on my tongue, teasing the edges of my fear. The connection we had forged felt both like a sanctuary and a prison, and I feared what it truly meant to be loved when the darkness continued to close in. Maybe, I started, but the weight of the world stilled my voice. The air thickened with unspoken truths, leaving me once again on the precipice of hope and despair, as if about to plunge into the depths of uncertainty. The echoes of Kevin's last words hung in the air, a dark cloud gathering over us, and as I stood there trembling, I felt the enormity of my struggle cresting like a tidal wave ready to crash ashore. For a moment, I was silent, unsure of how to navigate this uncharted territory filled with fear and dread. My heart raced, not only from the confrontation but also from the weight of Kelly's unwavering gaze. What did he mean by that? She repeated, her voice no longer steady but trembling slightly, a crack in her armor. I swallowed, feeling the fear twist around my throat akin to a noose tightening with every heartbeat. The silence stretched, thickening like mud, and I wished for a way to shield her from the reality that threatened to invade our fragile haven. How could I drag her into the abyss? How could I be the one to bring darkness into her light? Maybe I stammered, searching for the right words, the ones that could paint the picture without drowning her in despair. Maybe he meant the truth was like a weight pressing down my tongue. What if telling her brought forth the very thing I feared, the realization that she would see me as a burden, something tainted by memories I could not escape? But then, the flicker of her compassion ignited a spark within me. I thought back to the moment she stood unfazed by Kevin's cruelty, and I realized that the light she brought into my life was worth all the shadows lurking in my past. I took a deep breath, feeling her presence envelop me like a warm cocoon. He's not just a bully. He's a reminder of everything I've faced, of how I've struggled to fit in, and how I've always felt different. The honesty in my confession spilled out, unfurling a painful tapestry of my life. Each thread carried a weight of hurt and confusion, painted with scars of rejection and loneliness that had long defined my existence. I have issues, I finally confessed, the words barely escaping my lips. I've battled anxiety. I guess he thinks I'm weak, I admitted, a rush of vulnerability coursing through me. And sometimes, I believe it too. The silence that followed my admission was heavy but necessary. Kelly's eyes widened with understanding, and without saying a word, she reached for my hand. Her touch was a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of the void. Then let me be here for you, she said softly, the sincerity in her voice dismantling the fortress of uncertainty I had built around myself. You're not weak. You're brave for facing this. A bittersweet smile crept across my face, torn between appreciating her kindness and fearing the storm that still lurked in the shadows. But you don't know what you're in for, I murmured, my voice breaking, the fear creeping back into my mind. What if I'm too much? What if this all becomes too overwhelming? She squeezed my hand, a point of grounding in the tempest that raged inside. I wouldn't be here if I didn't want to be, she said firmly, the warmth of her words clashing against the lingering chill of doubt. We all have our battles. It's okay to need support. It's okay to not be okay. The raw honesty of her admission illuminated a path strewn with both hope and trepidation. I could feel the warmth of possibility weaving between us, a fragile thread connecting our hearts, but the shadows still clawed at the edges of my consciousness, whispering that every connection inevitably led to pain. Just when I thought I could breathe, when the heaviness began to lift, I noticed the flicker of her expression change. She had glanced past me, and I turned instinctively, following her gaze to a group of familiar faces who had just stepped out from a nearby building. Are they? I whispered, dread creeping back into my bones. It was a group of acquaintances, each one a reminder of the life I had tried to escape, a tapestry of playful laughter that felt achingly distant. They were drawn by the commotion, likely curious after witnessing Kevin's public spectacle. Kelly's grip tightened slightly around my hand, and I could feel her pulse quickening. They'll only see us if you let them. The warmth of her reassurance barely reached me as my heart hammered against my ribs, but a new emotion began to coalesce within me, a burgeoning rebellion against the paralysis that had so often defined my existence. Turning back to her, I steeled my resolve, determination igniting within. I won't let it define me anymore, I said, my voice gaining strength. The fear still lay beneath the surface, but it was tempered by a flicker of bravery that had been missing for far too long. But just as we stood there, the moment of clarity shattered. You don't need to hide, one of the figures in the group called out, his voice saturated with mockery. Are you still clinging to your little weirdo friend? A smattering of laughter echoed behind him, and the warmth dissipated into cold air. Kevin's words hadn't ended, they had stretched into a new form, more insidious than his taunts. Maybe she'll soon realize she's just being used as your shield. Does she really want to be seen with a loser? The laughter echoed, waves crashing against the shore of my resolve, causing me to falter as I turned to Kelly, searching for the strength I had just found within myself. But as I refocused on her, I saw that the shadows of concern had returned to her eyes, mingling with a hurt that pierced my heart. Maybe he's right, she said quietly, her confidence slipping. And as those words fell between us, like a sudden gust of wind that snuffed out our fragile flame, the question hung suffocatingly in the air: could I keep fighting if the one person I wanted to believe in me was beginning to doubt? The revelation crashed over me, a fresh wave of uncertainty that threatened to drag us both under. The chaos of their laughter faded into a dull roar in my ears, a haunting reminder that the world could be both beautiful and cruel simultaneously. Kelly's voice cracked like glass, and I could scarcely hear her amidst the cacophony of my spiraling thoughts. Maybe he's right, she murmured, her gaze dropping to the ground as if she could find strength in the cracks of the pavement, a place far more stable than our unraveling moment. I don't want to be seen as that person, someone who picks a fight she can't win. The words cut deep, slicing through the fragile bond we had just begun to form. I could see her light dimming, her spine bending under the weight of my turmoil and her own insecurities. Indeed, Kevin's taunt had burrowed into her mind like an unwanted seed, threatening to blossom into doubt and fear. No, I said, my voice rising over the mocking jeers of our audience, harsh and jagged. You're not like that. You've always been stronger than you give yourself credit for. With every heartbeat, I felt the fierce need to pull her back from that precipice she was teetering on, an edge that felt all too familiar to me. But my words, once aimed at bolstering her strength, felt half-hearted against the tide of her growing apprehension. I watched her expression morph, recognizing the battle within as she wrestled with my pain spilling over into her world. I didn't mean I hesitated, my voice trembling, fighting through the growing anxiety that seeped through my veins like venom. I didn't want to burden you with my struggles. You've shown me kindness when I didn't think I deserved it. How could I ask for more? The churning gravity of the situation threatened to pull us both under, but just then, a hand brushed against mine. An unexpected warmth enveloped me, grounding me against the chaos. I turned to grasp the hand, an unfamiliar face, full of determination. Hey, the boy said firmly, his voice cutting through the laughter like a lighthouse in the storm. You're not alone. None of us are. His words were brave, and though I didn't recognize him, his eyes reflected something that I had assumed was lost solidarity. The others in the group remained still, caught off guard by his unexpected outburst. Their laughter faltered for a moment, and in that silence, I dared to hope. I see you, he continued, his gaze unwavering. All of you. And what Kevin said is just noise. Don't let it define you. Incredibly, that simple declaration ignited flickers of warmth where shadows had danced before. I could see Kelly lifting her gaze, her eyes alight with a hint of gratitude tinged with disbelief. The boy's surge of compassion washed over both of us, rekindling a fragile connection that had almost been extinguished. For the briefest moment, it felt like our world paused, allowing space for new possibilities to creep in. Exactly, I echoed, feeling the pulse of hope racing through me. We're even stronger together. Each of us fights our own battles, and it's not a sign of weakness to lean on one another. But as swiftly as the moment had ignited, doubt crept back in, and I caught a glimpse of Kelly's hesitance. But what if it ends up hurting? What if they're right? Her voice was small, a shadow of the confidence she usually wore like armor. I opened my mouth, words spilling forth before I could cage them. Then we make a choice. We choose to be there for each other despite the fear. I choose you, Kelly. For the first time, I can see a life beyond my scars, and it's worth fighting for with you. There was a pause, our eyes locked, and for a heartbeat longer, the world around us faded, the jeers silenced, the weight of judgment lifted. Then, slowly, a flash of something bright broke in her gaze, something resembling belief, but just as I started to feel the walls of uncertainty beginning to crumble, a figure from the shadows pushed through the crowd, a girl clad in darkness, her lip curled into a smirk. "That's Rich," she taunted, eyes flicking scornfully between us. "What a sweet little friendship you've got going. But it's just a mask, isn't it? You're both still broken underneath." Her words pierced through the newfound warmth, leaving my heart reeling. Why was she here? How had we drawn more attention, more negativity into our moment of vulnerability? "No!" Kelly shouted suddenly, her voice ringing with a newfound strength. "That's not who we are. We're more than our pain." The girl paused, a flicker of confusion crossing her features, but my own strength faltered in that moment. A riptide of anxieties pulled me back, the shadows sweeping in once more, demanding my attention, rattling my resolve. But as Kelly stood up straight, affirming her voice, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could feel the weight of both her resolve and her fear clashing within me, a tempest of emotions battling for dominance. And just when I thought maybe, just maybe, we could emerge from this darkness together, I felt my phone buzz quietly in my pocket. Startled, I instinctively reached for it, pulling it out and glancing at the screen. My breath caught, the world coming to a halt. A message from Kevin, his name bold and glaring, an echo of everything that haunted me. "I know your secrets. And I'm not done yet." The chill raced down my spine, the implications sending shockwaves through my heart. I looked up at Kelly, the urgency in my eyes mirrored in hers. Whatever comfort I had felt moments ago was now eclipsed by a new reality, a fear that threatened to rip us apart before we even had a chance to fight together. "Kelly," I whispered, as the horizon darkened further, leaving behind shadows that we may never escape. The silence that followed Kevin's message hung like a dark cloud above us, pressing down with an insistent weight that threatened to suffocate any flicker of hope that had begun to glow. I stared at the screen, the words vibrating with the sting of a threat. It was as if the world had conspired to push me back into the darkness, where all my fears lurked and where secrets had crafted a prison so tight that escape seemed impossible. "Who is it?" Kelly asked, her brow furrowing with concern. But I couldn't bear to look her in the eye. I was too ashamed, too tangled within my own turmoil. "It's nothing," I whispered, attempting a grin that faltered before it could charm itself into being. "You're lying," she shot back, her voice cracking slightly, underscoring the tension that dragged us both deeper into uncertainty. I could see the flicker of panic flash across her features, her determination wavering, as if she feared the very ground beneath us might crumble. Before I could respond, the girl who had taunted us stepped closer, disdain etched in every line of her face. "What's the matter? Afraid of your own reflection?" she sneered, her words like shards of ice embedding themselves into my heart. Just as the doubt threatened to claw its way back inside, Kelly stepped forward defiantly, standing between me and that hurtful presence. "You don't get to control how we feel or define our worth," she shot back, fierce conviction lacing her voice. That moment of her staunch defense wrapped around me like a lifeline thrown in stormy seas. But Kevin's warning rattled in my mind, pulling me back down. I swallowed hard, focusing on the girl's smirk, that wicked glint in her eyes that seemed to revel in our pain. "You know, it's true, You really are both broken," she continued, voice low and honeyed, a stark contrast to the bitterness of her words. "But it's precisely because of that brokenness that you'll falter, time and time again. You're searching for hope in a dark world, but heroes don't exist, just survivors, and they're often left alone to pick up the pieces." "I agree," Kevin chimed in, emerging from the crowd as if responding to her cue. His presence loomed like a storm cloud ready to unleash rain and ruin. "And guess what? I'm here to make sure everyone knows just how broken you really are." My heart lurched. I glanced at Kelly, her expression began to harden, fingers clenching at her sides in a battle against the rising tide of fear. I felt helpless, entangled in a web of dread, fighting against my urge to confront him and protect her from the truth I could never escape. But in that moment, Kelly turned to me, her eyes catching the remnants of courage left within her gaze. "Don't listen to them," she urged quietly, almost a whisper, like fragile glass being steadied against the wind. "We're stronger than our past. Remember what we shared just now? We can choose to fight together." Her faith ignited something within me, a hesitant flame flickering back to life. And yet, that gnawing anxiety would not let me release its grip. I felt as though a dam was ready to burst, threatening to unleash everything I had kept locked away. But before I could formulate the words, my phone buzzed again, a cruel reminder in my pocket. This time, the vibrations felt like an intrusion, the message another tremor of uncertainty. "Just wait until everyone knows about your family," the latest text read. "You think your friends will stand by you? You wouldn't be so brave without the support of your lies. The truth is what breaks you." The darkness threatened to swallow me whole. I turned to Kelly, desperately searching for that light we had kindled only moments ago. But as she took a shaky step back, I felt an awful realization clawing at me. The shadows were creeping back in, and I didn't know how to fight them without tearing us apart. "Kelly," I started, but the words crumbled like ash on my tongue as fear danced in her eyes. "Stop!" she shouted suddenly, her voice fierce and commanding. "We're not backing down to him. I won't let anyone drive us apart." Her unwavering resolve was a powerful thing, and somehow it began to softly thaw the frozen fear lodged in my chest. "You're not broken," she said, stepping closer to me, which felt like trying to pull a stranded ship out of a storm. "We are not defined by our scars. We are more than that. We can build our story, one that is brighter than darkness." And so, I took a deep breath, summoning whatever courage I could muster. "We are strong together," I echoed, trusting the heat of her gaze would light the shadows that threatened to overtake us. But just as hope flickered anew, suddenly, Kevin laughed, a sound devoid of warmth, and stepped closer, plunging that fragile moment right back into chaos. "We'll see about that," he uttered, pulling out his phone. "The real game begins now. I'll show everyone the truth, your truth." At that moment, I had never felt more exposed, more vulnerable to the world, and a realization struck me like a bolt of lightning: it was not merely about my secrets anymore. It was about the people I cared for. It was about Kelly, and I couldn't let her pay the price for the chaos of my past. That I found myself at a perilous crossroads, fighting to decide if I could stand against Kevin's torment. Because if he was relentless in his pursuit to expose my vulnerabilities, I had to be even more determined to shield the heart I had painstakingly begun to trust. And then, in a heavy silence punctuated only by the thrum of our heartbeats, I took a step forward, ready to face the storm. I took a deep breath, stepping toward Kevin with every ounce of courage I could muster. My heart pounded in my chest, a wild drum calling for a battle I wasn't certain I could still win. "You think you can break me? You don't know who I am," I declared, trying to keep my voice steady, yet each word knocked against my ribcage, echoing the fear I had constantly fought to suppress. He smirked, the taunting glint in his eyes unwavering. "It's not about breaking you, it's about revealing the cracks. Everyone has a breaking point. You're just too deep into the illusion of strength to see it." Kelly's hand found mine, squeezing tightly. It was a silent promise, a shield against the onslaught of his words. You don't get to decide who we are, she shouted back, her voice resonating with renewed vigor. You don't know the power of our truth. Kevin's laughter rang hollow, but I felt a flicker of something fierce inside me. You want to expose me? Go ahead. Let everyone find out the truth. I won't hide anymore. At that moment, something changed in the atmosphere. It was as though the winds shifted, there was power in our unity, a palpable force that coursed through the air, intertwining our resolve with each supportive glance. Are you ready for the fallout? Kevin sneered, the confidence in his voice shaking only slightly as he dialed a number. The threat hung like heavy smoke in the air, thick with uncertainty. But something in my gut told me it was time to rise, to face the narrative he tried to impose on me, but just as he began to speak into the phone, preparing to unleash whatever demon he'd concocted, an unexpected clarity washed over me. I could feel the edges of fear beginning to dissolve. The warmth of Kelly's unwavering spirit ignited a fire deep within my bones. Stop! I shouted, my voice resonating with newfound determination. Stop trying to tear us apart with your lies and cruelty. What will you do? Cry? Scream? No one will take your side, Kevin mocked, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. I won't cry, but I will stand, I replied, my heart racing, recognizing the significance of my words. I might be haunted by my past, but I won't let it define my future. You can spread lies all you want, legacies create shadows. They're there to remind us of where we come from, yes, but more importantly, to help us grow stronger. In that moment, a small crowd had begun to gather. Faces turned toward us, a mixture of curiosity and concern painted across their features. I searched their eyes, seeking glimpses of support, and found a few familiar faces nodding, including some who had once walked away. For a split second, hope flickered again, but then, right on cue, the wind shifted, and Kelly's face paled. No. No. I followed her gaze just in time to see a group of figures emerge from the shadows. My heart dropped as they approached, each one carrying a familiar burden of judgment and scorn. The whispers that traveled among them pierced through the bravery we sustained together. What's that? Are they about to find out her family's secret? One voice hissed, laced with malice. Figures. Scars run deep in that family. They always do. As they drew closer, I felt the earlier warmth seep away, replaced by clenching dread. Each word they spoke felt like weighted stones being hurled directly at my heart, revealing my deepest fears, the ones I had hidden even from myself, but Kelly didn't release my hand. Her grip was steadfast, defying the gathering storm. This is our fight, she whispered to me, a mantra fitting for the moment. And we will face it together. The crowd murmured, uncertainty woven through their voices. The words I wanted to say felt stuck inside, as if they were shackled by the weight of my past. What would I say? How could I explain the extent of my scars when they loomed not just over me, but over Kelly too? Are you ready to tell them the truth? Kevin interrupted, his words slicing through the thickening tension. Or are you just going to stand there and pretend you're fine? In that moment of dark uncertainty, an unexpected warmth fluttered behind me, a defibrillator of hope. A warm presence moved closer, cutting through the chaos. It was Hannah, a girl I had once shared my story with. She stepped bravely forward, determination etched into her expression. I'm not ashamed of my story, and you shouldn't be either. We have the power to define our journeys. Do you really want to do this, Kevin? Caught off guard, he spun around, the smirk fading for a heartbeat. It gave me a glimpse of vulnerability, fanning the embers of bravery ignited by my friends. Enough! He shouted, but there was a crack in his voice now, a hint of fear taking form. Hope climbed back into my chest like a clandestine thief, and I found my voice rising alongside it. You might try to unearth my family's secrets, or rip apart our friendship. But I promise, no truth will scare us enough to silence our hearts and our voices. I will stand, not just for me but for Kelly, Hannah, and everyone who has fought silently against the judgment of the world." As I spoke, the faces in the gathering shifted, memory and recognition flickering in their eyes, a realization washing over them as they connected my scars to their own, the vulnerabilities they had hidden from the sun. "Together, we're stronger," I finished, feeling the words resonate not just within me, but in the hearts of those who bore witness. But just as we began to turn the tide, an unanticipated phone began to ring, a bright and clear disruption against the noise of conflict hanging in the air. All eyes turned as Kevin answered, and a flash of alarm spread across his face, followed by disbelief. "What? No, that can't be true," he stammered, turning pale as he continued listening. "You're lying. When did this happen?" "No." A new wave of tension washed over us, mirroring the storm clouds gathering once more. All eyes were on him, curiosity mixing with confusion, but I knew it only hinted at the chaos to come. "There's someone else involved?" he said, with an edge of desperation creeping in. "How do you know?" The sudden shift hung in the air like a thunderclap, a storm brewing on the horizon. And just like that, the tides of fate had shifted, but into what new world? What revelation lay waiting on the other side, and what truth would it reveal about us all? As the crowd leaned closer, I held on to Kelly's hand, wondering what tides this new storm might unleash, knowing the path forward would be a jagged one. I stood among the watchers, the weight of their gazes pressing down like heavy chains. Kelly's hand was still tightly wrapped around mine, a simple gesture, yet it anchored me in the chaos as uncertainty hung in the air. Kevin's face twisted into a mask of confusion, the phone pressed to his ear like an unwanted lifeline linking him to some dark truth that none of us anticipated. "What do you mean, you have evidence?" he spat suddenly, his voice cracking like a whip. Fists clenched at his sides, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the fear that crept behind his bravado waver against the tide of revelations he was about to face. Before anyone could respond, the crowd encroached further, drawn by the tension brewing before them, a collective heartbeat slowing to catch the importance of this moment. Hannah stepped closer, her defiance implicit in her posture. It was a reminder, our stories might differ, but our strength was drawn from the depths of our shared experiences. "I think it's time the truth comes out, Kevin," I said, my own voice steadying amid the uncertainty. "What are you hiding?" His eyes darted toward me, a flash of anger mixed with fear, but then a realization dawned. That phone call meant something, perhaps something that could topple his carefully erected facade. I could almost see the cogs turning in his mind, plotting escape routes and schemes, but then, like a breath of fresh air, soft warmth brushed against my back. It was Ava, a girl I had often associated with laughter and kindness, the sunlight in our darkened hallways, and as she approached, something profound shifted in the air. "Whatever you're afraid of, Kevin," she said softly, her gaze unwavering, "it's only as powerful as you allow it to be. If you have something to confess, now is the time. Stay out of this, Ava. You know nothing about what I've," he began, but she held up her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. She was right. In that moment, we could either sink together in this storm or rise and embrace our truths. As the threat of Kevin's impending reveal loomed larger, I felt a flood of memories surging within me, whispered doubts, careless whispers, those moments under harsh lights when judgment had chased me down hallways. But now, as I met Ava's gaze, I realized that pain was not the price we had to pay for redemption. Kindness offered a beacon. It had worked for Kelly, it had started to work for Hannah. What would it take to inspire Kevin? "Whatever is threatening you, Kevin," I began again, my voice echoing with conviction, "it doesn't define who you are. We all have secrets, we all carry shame like an unwanted badge. But we don't have to use that against each other." Kevin hesitated, the phone dangling limply in his hand. I could see the doubt creeping in. Could he truly hold on to his past and let it govern his relationships forever? "What you think is your power is really just your fear," I pressed, feeling a surge from the crowd gathering behind me. The murmurs echoed, growing louder, reflecting their own shared fears and truths. "What if you let that go? What if you shared whatever you're terrified of? Maybe it could ease the weight for all of us." The challenge hung heavy in the air, and for a heartbeat, we were suspended in a fragile moment. Could I offer him the same gift of vulnerability he had been so determined to deny? Kevin's eyes flared with something I couldn't quite place. Was it anger? Or a dawning realization? You think you can just— But before he could finish his sentence, his face paled again, and he turned abruptly, pacing beneath the flickering light. Whatever had been revealed on the other end of the call seemed to escalate in urgency. All the while, Kelly, Ava, and Hannah stood resolute beside me, 3 images of strength amidst the turmoil. It was as if they illuminated a path I hadn't fully realized existed. Kevin, no matter who you think you are, what you believe will take from you it's not true, Kelly urged, her voice unwavering. You won't lose anything by being honest with us. But just as I reached forward to bridge that divide, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, cutting through the murmurs like a knife. I fished it out, my heart racing with the thought of whatever awaited on the screen. When I read the message, shards of icy dread pierced through my bravery. It was from an unknown number, but the message was unmistakable: you're not the only one with secrets. Be careful who you trust. The air turned cold, and I felt goosebumps rise along my skin. I glanced up sharply at Kelly, then back at Kevin, unsure of the burgeoning reality that was threatening to unspool everything. What if other players were involved? What if Kevin wasn't the mastermind behind this darkness after all? In that frozen moment, we weren't fighting against one enemy, but maybe, just maybe, against a shadowy web that connected us all, swirling around us like tormented souls caught in a storm. Would our collective bravery be enough to unravel the truth? As I held the phone tight, colors of fear and uncertainty painted our outlook once again. The tide had shifted, but now it felt like we were all teetering on the brink of a dark revelation that could either shatter our fragile bonds or solidify them in ways we never expected. As the crowd observed, looking to us for guidance, each heartbeat accelerated the dread, leaving the air thick with anticipation, unanswered questions thrumming in our veins. How much deeper did this darkness go? And could we face it together before it engulfed us all? The atmosphere changed abruptly, a palpable tension crackling through the air like static before a storm. My heart raced, a truth, no, a revelation tremored in the core of the moment. I could feel hundreds of eyes boring into me, dissecting our predicament, whispering 1,000 unasked questions that none of us were prepared to answer. Who sent that message? Kelly asked, her voice a fragile whisper that sliced through the din. Her features were taut with concern, her once bright eyes now stormy. I chose to refrain from responding. Every instinct told me to keep that information close, an untouched wound. The surrounding crowd hummed with anxiety, but it was Kevin's sudden stillness that stole my attention. He had halted in his frenzied pacing, his head bowed. In the fading light, I could just make out the contours of his clenched jaw rippling with conflict. The uncertainty was eating him alive, gnawing at the very threads of his bravado. Listen to me, Hannah interjected, her voice steady yet warm. There was a surprising confidence emanating from her as she stepped closer, echoing Ava's earlier encouragement. Whatever you're dealing with, Kevin, none of us are wanting to judge you. We want to understand you. Her words hung delicately in the air, dangling between hope and desperation. It was a small moment of kindness, yet it lit a spark amid the encroaching shadows. I noticed Ava step back slightly, her fingers brushing against mine, an unassuming act that tethered me to the warmth of camaraderie. It was like a lifebuoy thrown into dark waters. The truth may be painful, I added tentatively, but it's also freeing. Holding on only tightens the chains. My eyes never left Kevin's, probing for a glimmer of understanding. Maybe sharing it won't shatter your world, but will instead form bridges, instead of barriers. The silence became an entity, wrapping around us, pushing us into a closer formation as if the crowd sensed a reckoning. A collective breath was drawn, as though we were one organism, poised to leap or retreat. Kevin looked up, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, reflections of ghosts long buried. Then, he shook his head. You don't get it. This isn't just something I can spit out. It reaches back to places I've tried to bury. His voice rose, tinged with anguish and anger, raw as an open wound. You think you're all so courageous? I'm the villain in this story. This is how I survive. We're not asking for perfection, Ava implored gently, her voice caressing the space between us like a soft hymn. We're asking for connection. If you've been painted as the villain, it doesn't mean you have to wear that label. You're here, right now. Don't you see? You can change the narrative. But just then, amidst Kevin's struggle, another vibration shattered the fragile moment. My phone buzzed again, insistent and demanding. This time, I anticipated another ominous message but instead found words that struck like frantic lightning. I know about your secrets, and I'm coming for you. You won't keep them for long. My heart plunging into a void of dread. The air thickened with weighty sorrows, and for a heartbeat, panic gnawed at the edges of my resolve. Who did this? I blurted, half expecting the crowd to unravel, to point fingers, to whisper accusations in this crucible of trust we had built. What is going on? Kevin's voice was sharp, jagged with the urgency of his own unrest. What's happening? But what confronted me was not just a question of my own safety, it epitomized a desperate choice, a choice I could no longer keep close to my chest. The truth would incite chaos, unraveling us. Yet it wasn't merely my truth to give, was it? Glancing around, I realized that the walls of our sanctuary had become transparent, and the comfort of anonymity had eroded into vulnerability. The tapestry of secrets that wound around each of us was layered and fragile. And if we were to fight against this unseen enemy, we had to unravel the knots we had so carefully gathered. In the face of uncertainty, I took a step forward, squaring my shoulders against the looming shadows. I don't know who is sending those messages, I said slowly, bringing a quiet authority to my voice. But I need you all to know that whatever happens next together, we'll face it. And Kevin, whatever you choose to share could lead us into the light we all desperately need. As I glanced into Kevin's stormy depths, the moment stretched endlessly, and dread transformed into a flicker of hope. The crowd shifted, seemingly closer, gathering energy like a coiling snake ready to strike. Just then, out of the corner of my eye, I noted an unfamiliar figure lurking at the edge. The combination of his posture and attire felt distinctly out of place, a specter in this sea of voices intertwined in shared fears. Then he stepped forward, unwavering, and with his arrival, a different kind of tension slithered back into our midst. Funny how secrets have a way of surfacing, he said, his voice smooth and chilling. Especially when someone is determined to expose them. The words lashed through the crowd like a whip, pulling the tension to an unbearable precipice, as all eyes swung in his direction. A new fear ignited, swirling ominously, entangling us in a web we thought we could untangle together, and with that, we stood at the brink of revelation, each of our lives intertwined, wrapped in the fragile threads of trust, secrets, and the looming shadows of an uncertain tomorrow. Would we find the strength within us to combat these emerging threats? Or would betrayal rise from the ashes of our desperation, hardening our hearts and driving us further apart? The dusk hung heavily over us, an ominous blanket wrapping our small assembly in its folds as we braced ourselves against the growing storm that threatened to engulf us all. The figure stood unsmiling, casting an unsettling shadow that crept across the ground like ink bleeding into water. Each eye in the crowd shifted from him to Kevin, then back again, as if the air had thickened, drawing the weight of our unsaid truths even deeper into the folds of our hearts. The chill of his voice lingered, an uninvited guest settling among us with malicious intent. "Who are you?" Kelly challenged, her voice steady, though fear underlined her words. It was brave facing this intruder, this harbinger of chaos. I felt her strength flicker, a candle in a harsh wind, but it was accompanied by urgency. We needed to unite against this external threat, deal with the humidity of secrets still hanging heavy in the air. "Someone who knows exactly what you all are hiding," he replied, his eyes glinting with amusement, "a predator to our prey. But question is, how much longer can your stories stay hidden? The clock is ticking." Secrets have a way of festering, you know. Every beat of silence seemed to punch deeper into our shared anxiety, as if the ground might give way beneath us. I'd been dreading the moment when our hidden truths would emerge, but it felt like he was holding a knife to our throats, forcing us to rip them free. Kevin's flaring nostrils echoed his inner turmoil. "What do you want from us?" His voice trembled, not from quaking knees but from a grounding rage that promised self-preservation. It was evident, beneath the layers of dread and guilt, he was still fighting for his cloak of bravado. "Maybe just a simple exchange of truths," the unknown voice replied, a dark smile creeping across his face. "I tell you what I know, and in return," while he leaned closer, each word a whisper dripping with venom, "you tell me your darkest fears." The tremor in Kevin's stance mirrored the tremor in my heart. Was this truly the path we were to travel together? Bartering our vulnerabilities to a stranger who had burst into our fragile world? "No," I interjected, stepping forward again, emboldened by a desperate need to protect the dimming light of our gathered courage. "We won't give in to intimidation. You can't tear us apart like that." "Can't I?" His words lanced through me, and the laughter that followed felt like breaking glass. "Let us not pretend you don't have what I want. You all think you're safe here, but I'm not the only one watching. There are shadows that cling to the lives you lead, and I promise you they will come crashing down on you before the night is over." I glanced around at the faces surrounding me. I could see doubt and fear reflected in their eyes, but I also sensed the solidarity that blossomed briefly in the ashes. "We've all dealt with shadows, most of us more than we care to admit," Ava spoke, her gentle tone cutting through the tension like a soft hand touching a wound. "But haunting experiences don't define us. They shape us, yes, but they also unite us. You can't tear apart what's bonded through pain." The stranger paused, his expression shifting subtly, intrigued by her words. Amid the storm of fear, this flicker of resilience offered a glimmer of hope, pulsing against the backdrop of impending chaos. Could he truly be swayed, or was he simply biding his time? With each passing heartbeat, it became painfully clear that whatever he represented was more than just an outsider, it was an embodiment of the secrets we ran from, both for ourselves and for each other. "Resilience, huh?" The stranger chuckled mockingly, but hesitation crept into his tone. "Very poetic. Tell me, how well do you really know each other?" He turned toward Kevin, that dark smirk morphing into something more sinister. "And what do you really think would happen if you finally opened your mouth?" In that moment, a collective silence enfolded us once more, heavy with the weight of unvoiced fears. Kevin stared back at me, his internal battle evident in the slight twitch of his jaw. I touched him briefly, a soft encouragement in the face of the impending storm, hoping to solidify the bridge that Ava spoke of so brilliantly. "What you see, what you feel, matters," I urged, my voice louder than my heartbeat. "We cannot let his presence dirty our waters. You have to choose now: shield yourself in silence or expose the truth to shared strength. We rise together, or we are nothing." Kevin's trembling hands drew in a deep breath, and for a moment, I could see the choice warring within him. A storm brewed not only outside but within each of us, the choice to face our collectively haunting past or to allow this stranger's threats to cut us apart. Just then, the phone vibrated again in my pocket, this time pulsing with a different energy, a more ominous clamor. I could not resist pulling it out, an instinct akin to touching a burning flame, but as soon as I looked at the screen, shock poured through my veins. A message, clear and clipped: "Don't think you can hide behind each other. They'll come for you. For all of you." The name at the top jolted me like a slap to the face. It twisted within my chest, and the air around us stilled, instincts clawing at the edges of what was about to spiral into chaos. "Is this how it ends?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking past the tremors, echoing back into the void. Kevin's eyes met mine, and in that shared glance surged 1,000 reflections of recognition, loss, and the weight of our secrets. It flickered with the kindling of a revelation still waiting to unfurl. As the stranger's laughter faded into the darkening night, I felt the fragile thread of our unity quiver, drawing taut ready to snap or weave something stronger. Whatever choice we made, the truth would come, unrelenting and consuming, and as the shadows deepened, one thing became painfully clear: the real storm was just beginning. The air was thick with tension, every gaze planted firmly upon the stranger who had drawn near with threats veiled in intrigue. His words hung like fog, clinging to each of us, but amidst the lingering trepidation, I felt a flicker of something deeper, an awareness that we stood on the edge of clarity, and the moment held the power to reshape our fates. Kevin stood rigid, a storm of uncertainty evident in his eyes. The challenge between vulnerability and denial clashed fiercely on his face, morphing into a mask of determination. Before the crowd could breathe their fear into his decision, I stepped forward, resolving to hold the ground beneath us, unyielding. "What you know about each of us can't define our worth," I declared, my voice steady and filled with conviction. "Kevin, we're more than shadows. The burdens we carry speak to our strength, not our weaknesses." Fingers twined tightly around Kelly's, a grounding warmth amidst the chaos, I focused on him, imploring him to listen. "This is our chance, not just to fight against the threats posed by our pasts but to reclaim our narratives. Take the leap with us." A flicker of doubt crossed Kevin's face, but something deeper began to shift within him. The battle inside him gave way to something more resolute. To our surprise, he dropped his defiance, letting the mask of bravado shatter at his feet. Maybe he hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper, laced with raw vulnerability. "Maybe I don't want to be seen as the villain anymore." The quiet admission struck a chord, shifting the collective breath of the crowd. It was then that the stranger's shadow shifted like a tempest on the horizon. "And what do you think will happen when they find out who you truly are?" he taunted, leaning in closer, challenging us to buckle under pressure. But we stood firm, Kelly's grip steady on mine, fueling the blaze within. "What happens next is up to us," I replied, fueled by an urgency I hadn't felt before. "We will share our truths because they lead to freedom, because they highlight our humanity. And perhaps they'll show you that you don't have to harbor shadows to survive." The stranger scoffed, but his confident facade flickered for a heartbeat, an implicit question reflected in his eyes. Perhaps he hadn't anticipated our willingness to confront the very truths he believed could dismantle us. "Speak then, if you're so eager," he challenged, but deep down, I sensed a hint of fear creeping into the corners of his bravado. This was not our fight alone, it was a mutual skirmish against fear, isolation, and false perceptions. And then, as if breaking free from the chains of silence, Kevin inhaled deeply, and the theater of his truth unraveled in front of us. "I've been so afraid that showing my scars would mean exposing a weakness." His voice trembled with every word. "They've haunted me longer than I've let on. My family, my past. I thought I was protecting myself, but this is suffocating." His words fell like petals, some clinging to the hope blossoming in the air and others laden with sorrow, unraveling the threads of our individual darkness. And amid the silence, we felt a tide rushing forth, our fears flooding free. One by one, we opened up. Hannah spoke of her battles with anxiety, Ava confessed her feelings of never being good enough, and even I admitted the crippling weight of my past that made me believe I was unworthy of connection. Each truth shared was a candle lit against the flickering tempest of uncertainty, illuminating spaces we once hid away. As the darkness retreated in the face of forgiveness and solidarity, I could see cracks begin to form in the stranger's demeanor. Perhaps he hadn't anticipated the improbability of our bonding, spinning us together as a cohort amidst the fear he sought to sow. "You all stand here, bearing your souls so willingly. Have you learned nothing?" His bravado faltered, eyes narrowing as disbelief washed over him. "You think those will save you? These admissions? You're nothing but a collection of broken stories." But each time those words clashed against the walls of our unity, our resolve thickened. "We are not just broken, we are evolving, reshaping our identities through connection," Kelly stated firmly, her voice ringing out above the doubt. "The power lies not in hiding your scars, but in recognizing the beauty of healing with the help of those around you." My heart thudded, riding the currents of emotion swelling as I reached for her hand again. In that moment, she was the voice of countless others who had suffered silently, gathering strength together to face the fears we had buried so long ago. With each revelation, a palpable shift illuminated the air. The hardened ground beneath our feet became a foundation of solidarity, rising from the ashes of individual struggles. We recognized that as twisted and tangled as our stories may be, their intertwining created lifelines for one another. In the throes of these confessions, a realization of profound clarity washed over me. Every sentence unspoken was a testament to humanity willing to fight, willing to face the divide, and willing to strive for more than the secrets and shadows that once confined us. Feeling emboldened, I turned to our ominous stranger. "And you? Would you care to share why you arrived here so intent on tearing apart what we've built?" As if caught off guard by the collective strength of our pulse, the darkness that bubbled within him began to flicker. He stepped back slightly, uncertainty creeping in as the shadows around him flickered, no longer as intimidating as they had once seemed. "Time is not on your side," he retorted, slipping further into his shell, but for the first time, his confidence felt hollow, like a last breath against the winds of resistance sweeping through us. "The only thing that truly saves us is connection," Kevin challenged, his voice rising with renewed strength. "Whoever has been sending you these messages desires isolation, fear, but what they don't understand is we are stronger together. This is a community, we protect one another." A hush fell over the space, a bridge linking us against the unknown, forging a path toward courage where we had once stood meekly in fear. "We don't have to hide or deny our scars," I added, a fire spurred anew with every word spoken. "We'll harness the truths that bind us into a tapestry of strength." The stranger blinked, his smirk thinning as the weight of our resolve pressed against him like an undeniable force. As he shifted, I glimpsed something flicker in his eyes, a glint of uncertainty, perhaps repentance or a reluctant respect. "What if it didn't have to be this way?" he murmured, the challenge in his tone fading. "What if there's a way to unearth the truth without destruction?" And in that moment, I realized that maybe he, too, was trapped beneath layers of shadows, longing for release but unwilling to confront the vulnerability that accompanied it. Perhaps his desire wasn't merely to expose our truths, but an unending search for acceptance in his own painting of darkness. I took a step back, holding my breath. What if there are other paths? Paths of understanding and acceptance, rather than hatred and retribution? A wave of silence swept over the crowd as Kevin's expression shifted, considering the choice now laid before him, to stand in the shadows or step toward the light with us, to be honest, to unite. "You can still choose your narrative," I reminded him softly, the warmth of our collective spirit surging around us. "We can help you with the strength we've found together." As the darkness waned and the shadows receded, a flicker of uncertainty transformed within that familiar figure, opening up pathways yet undiscovered. Whatever battles lay ahead, we would face them together, shoulders brushed together, hearts fortified, and in that moment of tenuous clarity, I knew the storm had woven us together, a tapestry unfurling across every thread and scar, creating a form of resilience we never knew existed within us. As the final rush of dusk gave way to the tender light of dawn, I reached back to Kelly, her unwavering spirit shining even brighter than before. "What comes next is ours to shape," I whispered, my heart swelling with gratitude. In that illuminated breathing space, we could finally accept the beauty of our scars, our collective wisdom fueling the fire inside. "Together," I echoed, turning to face the horizon, and as our stories mingled, I felt the swell of our union, a crescendo of strength laced with hope amidst the unknown. Together, we would rise, stepping from shades into the light, ready to become something greater than mere whispers of our past, forging a future illuminated by understanding and acceptance. And I could finally feel it. This was not just the end, but the poignant beginning of something extraordinary. As we held fast, it's where healing poured its luminescence, crafting a tapestry woven in the fabric of love, empowerment, and connection. Together, we are not just survivors, I breathed into the winds of the moment, but warriors who embrace the art of our scars. And as I spoke those words, I knew the world would not remain the same. Mended and reborn, we stood proud and unyielding. Together, we would reshape the stories on the canvas of our lives.